All right, welcome back to KM6LYW Radio. This is a show where we talk about amateur radio with an emphasis on digital or data modes, trying to reimagine them in the information age. Today's no exception. We're going to be talking about Raspberry Pis. I know they're really hard to get. You go to rpilocator.com and they're just not there. They can't be had at any price. So maybe you're digging around in the back of the junk drawer. You find a gem like this. This is the original Raspberry Pi. The original Raspberry Pi Model B, dated 2011. This is over 10 years old. And you only got to ask yourself one question. Well, will it DigiPi? Hey, let's find out this time on KM6 LYW Radio. Yeah. Hey, welcome back. Hey, I don't know, we're doing classic rock for the bumper music. That's Rush there. Go see the tribute band Rash if you haven't. If you're Rush fans, go see the tribute band Rash. We just saw them live because you can't really physically see Rush anymore. All right, enough on Rush, enough on the bumper music. Let's talk about the original Raspberry Pi Model B. We're going to see if we can make this work because, for a lot of people, this is the only Raspberry Pis we have left. And I get the question all the time, Craig, they find all these other things. Well, maybe we can run DigiPis on other things, Well, Craig, will this run on the Banana Pi? It won't. Banana Pi is a completely different thing. It's not a Raspberry Pi. There's other vendors out there. I think there's Radixa. There's another vendor called the Rock Pi. You can get this isn't a Rock. I don't have a Rock Pi, so I've got a Rock. No, you can't run DigiPi on Rock Pis. You can't run them on Orange Pis. Really, DigiPi will only run on the Raspberry Pi, okay? And the original Raspberry Pi is called the Model B, not the Model A, surprisingly. That was released afterwards. So the deal is for all of these other Pis, like the Banana Pi here, this will run Armbian, okay? It doesn't run Raspberry Pi OS. So the litmus test here is if it will run the Raspberry Pi OS, like this. This is an officially branded Raspberry Pi, from the Raspberry Pi Foundation. This is another example of Raspberry Pi Zero. These will run DigiPi. So if it runs a Raspberry Pi OS, it will run the DigiPi SD card image. If you have a Banana Pi, it's not going to run DigiPi, but you can load Armbian or Debian on these. This is a Banana Pi, and they'll work just fine. But I don't have a DigiPi image for these for a lot of reasons. A lot of them don't have integrated Wi-Fi, they're really expensive. Like the Asus Tinkerboard, that would be cool. I think the CPUs are more Android oriented. That's why we don't see, more widespread Linux support. So yeah, to run DigiPi, the DigiPi software image, the one that I make. In fact, this is available to patrons of KM6LYW Radio at krager.org/DigiPi. You can get the SD card image right here. In fact, I just burned one right. You burn it. You don't even burn SD cards anymore. You flash them, right? You burn CD-ROMs. You get it here. This will do every data mode you can think of. So AX.25, APRS. You can connect it with your phone. You completely operate it with your phone or your tablet. You don't need to be a Linux expert to use this. So this SD card image, we're going to put in this ancient Raspberry Pi B, and we're going to see what happens. So again, the point was it's got to be a Raspberry Pi. It can't be a Banana Pi. It can't be a Rock Pi. It can't be Radixa Pi. It can't be an Orange Pi. It can't be any of those other kinds of Pis. Those all run Armbian. And really, the operating system has the actual firmware. These Raspberry Pis don't have firmware built in, so it's really loading firmware into the system as it's booting. They're really that simple. So let's see if we can figure this out. We've got the original Raspberry Pi B. I don't know, it's upside down. Can you guys read the date? I just want to make sure you guys see the date on that. It's on there somewhere. It says 2011. And this Pi is slow. It's a single core. I think this one had the option of 512 megabytes. I think you get one with 256 as well. This has 512, but it has extra memory to spare after we start messing with the DigiPi. I did get the DigiPi booted up once, but let's build one anyway. You go to krager.org/DigiPi, get the SD card image. From there, again, that's available to patrons of the channel. I'm going to put it, remember these large SD card things? I've got an adapter because it uses the old SD card. Let's jam that in there. Hey, let's take the this big old SD card and we're going to put it inside of our ancient Raspberry Pi Model B here. We got that. I'm going to make myself a little smaller so you can see what's going on the desk here. We've got a desk cam in the studio. I'll just leave it like that. Maybe we'll back up a little bit. So we've got, what have we got? We got the SD card in here. We're going to need some more stuff. So this doesn't even come with Wi-Fi, guys. This didn't come with Wi-Fi originally. That was kind of an option. So you can get one of these little Wi-Fi adapters. I don't know, what's Edimax or something. It's a USB thing. That's going to use a USB port right there. So now we have Wi-Fi. All right, let's keep going. Now the DigiPi comes with a little monitor so you can see what's going on. So we've got one of these little monitors. Let's just jam that on there as well. You notice it doesn't even feature a complete, I don't know how many pins are on there. It's not even a complete GPIO header, but let's just smash this on here as well. Let's get that on there. Hey, I actually got that on camera. So you can see there's like 2 pins left over. Boy, it's really easy to misalign these. I've done it a few times. I actually destroyed one display doing that. Okay, so we're getting closer to the DigiPi. We have got the Wi-Fi, we got the SD card in place with the adapter, we got the monitor on there. So I think at this point, all we really need to do is hook up the radio. I've got a USB cable for that that's hooked up to this ICOM 705 that's actually on an APRS frequency. We're gonna go ahead and plug this in. Of course, you get it the wrong way, the right way. Oh, I got it right that time. Plug that in. Okay, the SD card's in there, and I'm going to plug in the power. We're getting to the moment of truth here. And we're going to boot this up, and let's see. It's turning on. We got a red light on the thing. Okay, it's not dead. It's been around for over a decade, this Raspberry Pi. It is booting up. It's going to take a minute. This was a single core CPU. So what I'm going to probably do is put you guys on pause. And as soon as the DigiPi boot screen comes up, I'm going to go ahead and I'll resume this video. So don't think this is lightning fast. It's not. You're going to have to wait for it, okay? You're going to have to wait for it. I can put you guys on pause. All right, and we have the boot screen. Inconceivable. It actually boots. It's running DigiPi 1.6 Mark II. How about that? You notice it's kind of hanging out on that the boot screen. So what it does by default, it goes into TNC mode for AX.25 or APRS, and it'll do that by default. Normally, like on a fast Raspberry Pi, like this Raspberry Pi, the newest Model 0, it works in a fraction of the time. But this thing is just chugging along. So having this Pi is better than no Pi at all, you guys, even though it's slow. And we're going to see how well it does here on APRS. Man, it is still on the boot screen. Let me back this off a little bit. So all DigiPis, like I said, are managed via a web interface or either via your Wi-Fi or tablet. I've got a web browser right here. And this is the DigiPi home screen. Actually, I think this is from a prior boot. This is still actually booting up. It's just going full blast. It's trying so hard to be a DigiPi. Let's see, it's still on the boot screen. So I can go over here. I can click on DigiPi to refresh. In fact, actually, I have a refresh thing down here, but I don't even think the web management face is up just yet. Oh, it blinked. I'm waiting for it to go into TNC mode. I saw it blink. It usually means it was initialized by Direwatch. That's the software that I wrote that actually drives this display, so you can see all kinds of cool DigiPi stuff. So it actually went into DigiPi TNC mode, and it should be talking to the radio now. So we're just kind of waiting for packets to arrive to see if it will pick them up, to see if it's actually doing DigiPi stuff. So I can go over here and click on DigiPi. It will load the web interface, so you can turn on and off all of your favorite digital modes here. We should find that it's in TNC and APRS iGate mode. It's actually still spinning. It's going through every single service to see what its status is. And yeah, sure enough, it's in TNC or APRS iGate mode. So the real question is, can I send a packet using my cellular telephone? Let's see what we can do. I'm going to click on Start Tracking. This is APRS Droid, by the way. So this is my phone. Click on APRS Droid, and this is how you can do APRS stuff. So you don't have to actually, if you want to send a text message on your radio, you don't have to actually type on this. You can use your phone like a normal person. Let's get this out of the way. All right, so I'm going to say Start Tracking. And we're going to see if this can connect. Now, this is connecting over TCP IP. So if you go into Preferences, you can't connect over Bluetooth. Why? Because there is no Bluetooth on the original Raspberry Pi Zero. So again, you have to adapt and overcome. You need to go into Connection Preferences and Connection Type. Make sure that's set to TCP IP and enter the host name of your Raspberry Pi as it comes up on your network. Hey, there is a secret trick to knowing your IP address. Actually, if I was to press this button right here while it's in TNC mode, it would go into standby mode and display your IP address. That's insider information if you have a DigiPi, because I usually have no idea if it's even turned on at all other than the LEDs. All right, so let's go back. I'm going to click on Start Tracking here. It's going to say connecting to 192.168.1. It looks like it already transmitted a packet. And so to answer the question, will the original Raspberry Pi be DigiPi? The answer is a resounding yes, it will. It will do the most basic functions that a DigiPi does. So under the hood, this is really running Direwolf. That's doing the sound modem stuff, and it's talking to the radio over USB using USB audio. And of course, that's set to an APRS frequency right now. And we did in fact send a packet. We could, what else can we do? We could put it into like digipeater mode. We can go over here and say APRS digipeater. I can press on here, and we'll see it to reconfigure itself into a digipeater. And it's gonna do it so slowly, it's painful. But man, once it comes up, it actually works. Come on, come on, come on. It's chugging along. So it's stopping the old instance of Direwolf, starting a new instance of Direwolf, and then it's running the Direwolf display software. So that's going to take a minute. In fact, if we go to packet log, we can see some of that cool stuff happening here. Let's take a look. You know, it does complain about CPU usage. You know, we can talk about that as well. Yeah, it's in APRS Digi mode finally. APRS Digi. So at this point, we should be able to send a packet on this and hear it be repeated. So watch for that. And we were repeated just now. I heard it back on the radio. You guys should have heard it too. And of course, we show up as our little running man on the screen here on the DigiPi. Now you will notice in the Direwolf log, it will say every now and then your CPU is too slow. You know, that can happen while there's other stuff running while it's booting. But in this case, you know, the CPU is a little slow. In fact, I even see that message sometimes on Raspberry Pi 4s. There's a couple of different things you can do to make that better. So just run top just to see how your CPU is doing. Actually, this is on my PC. You don't want to see that. I want to see SSH Pi at DigiPi. Actually, you know what we should do? We'll just use the web. No, you know, I'm not going to use the web interface. You can actually use the web interface to pull up a shell. Maybe we can do that. It's just the fonts can be kind of dodgy. I don't know if I can zoom this in and up. You guys can see that. Yeah, let's use that. Pi. The password's always Raspberry until you change it, and you should change it. You should change it. All right, so now we actually have a shell on our Raspberry Pi, and we almost have a shell. This is how slow it's going. All right, and so what you can do is run top, and that's just the list of processes that are happening on here. In fact, it's I need to make this a little bit wider in order to see the process names. I can do that now. Almost there. Of course, I have to kill some of the video here. I'll scroll this out of the way for you. So if we look at top, we see CPU information. So we're burning 47% is user space CPU. We've got 30% idle. That's something you really want to watch for. The CPU's 22% idle right there. And it's hanging out. The system interrupts, these are actually pretty low. When this gets high, that means the operating system's doing something on behalf of the user space software. So system interrupts, we want to see that pretty low. And that's really what's handling the audio. So you'll see sometimes the audio chain will break on a slow CPU. So some tricks that we can do to make this even better. Look at the Direwolf process here. It'll always be the first one because it's burning the CPU, and that's PID 1042. I want you to sudo renice. I want you to -5 and 1042. That was the process of the Direwolf thing there, and then we hit that. Okay, so now we made it Direwolf a higher priority, and then I also want you to sudo renice the PID of Direwatch. That's the display driver, and we don't need to see the display that, you know, update really fast. I want you to sudo renice, and I want you to do a +5, and that will be for the Direwatch process ID, which is 1044. We see it up there. All right, so now Direwolf has a better runtime priority than the actual display software, because we really want Direwolf to be able to do those decodes. And when we run the top command again, we can see Direwolf is running with a nice value of -5, which means it's not nice, which means it's hogging the CPU, which is really what we want. And of course, we see the Direwatch software, it just went away, is running at a +5, which means it's being nice. You know, if it's because it's above 0, you know, and 0 is a regular process priority. So now Direwolf has some priority. It's running as it's the sound modem and digipeater, and Direwatch, the software that you see here, is driving the display. but it's going to do it more slowly with the, but we don't care. We don't care how fast the display drives itself. So everything's working. So I think the answer to the question here is, will the original Raspberry Pi be? It's 11 years old. Will it DigiPi? I think the answer is a resounding yes, it will. It will for like the APRS and dire wolf modes, okay? Now, don't try to run WSJTX FT8, okay? I mean, you can try it. Or slow scan television or FLDigi or JS8 call. These things will actually run if you're patient enough. I'll admit I actually have one contact made on FT8 using this Raspberry Pi, using FT8 plugged into, you know, the big boy HF radio over here. And it did in fact work, okay? But don't think it's going to be usable, not on this Raspberry Pi. But if you want to do a WinLink email server, or we're using PAT or RDOP, or maybe you want to do Linux Node, Bulletin Board, BBS, that kind of stuff, you maybe want to be an APRS Digipeater or an iGate or a combination therein, and you want to control it over your phone, you certainly can. I'm going to go over here and maybe talk to, I don't know, just for fun, I'm going to send a message to call sign WXBot, and I can say 95614, hey, it's a zip code here. I can say okay. And it's sending out the messages. You can see it doing stuff. It's transmitting and receiving. And let's see what WXBot says. This is actually hooked up to my the antenna on my roof here. So I'm doing pretty good. And of course, what WXBot responded. I am 5 miles east of Auburn, California. And today is mostly sunny with a high of 88 degrees. That's Fahrenheit. That's centigrade, I hope. So that's WXY. So this is all working swimmingly well, particularly for the packet modes. Okay, it's going to work really well for you if you have original Raspberry Pi Model B. Now, I don't recommend it, but if that's all you got, that's what you use. What I really recommend is the Raspberry Pi Zero 2 wireless. This thing's fantastic. It just runs circles around this, and you can run all of those higher end modes, FT8 and JS8 call. It'll all work just fine on there. And again, it all displays on your phone. It all displays on your tablet or your PC. You don't need to be like a Linux dude to do this. So we're making data modes more accessible to the amateur radio community. And to answer the question originally, yeah, don't run it on a Banana Pi. Okay, it's got to be a Raspberry Pi. It can't be a Banana Pi. It can't be a Rock Pi. It can't be an Orange Pi. It can't be a Radix. It can't be an Asus Tinkerboard. All of those run Armbians, because those are special, different types of ARM processors. So it needs to be an actual Raspberry Pi to run the DigiPi software image. You know, if at some point we can never get a Raspberry Pi again, we're going to have to consider porting the DigiPi project over to one of those single board computers. So we're not going to do that today. My buddy Walt, hey Walt, if you're watching, I know you managed to get a Raspberry Pi 4 from Adafruit just the other day. So there's hope. There is just a small glimmer of hope that the supply chain will come back and we're going to start doing Raspberry Pi stuff again. All right, so none of this would be possible without you guys, my patrons. You guys are rocking it as per usual. So patreon.com/KM6LYW radio. I'm sorry, just /KM6LYW. Anything will get you access to the DigiPi image. It has all of the data modes you can think of. All the data modes that we talk about on the channel are right there in one SD card image, and it will boot on what? A Raspberry Pi, not a Banana Pi, right? It'll boot on a Raspberry Pi. Any Raspberry Pi, even the Raspberry Pi B. So patrons get access to that. And again, if you just want to install Raspberry Pi OS and run Direwolf, you know, you can totally do that. There's some tricks you can do, like the renicing of the values. The Direwolf, you can change like the bit rate if you want. I had it down to like 12K at one point to make this work. Also, you know, something I didn't mention that I probably should. I know we're talking about patrons, but the Wi-Fi doesn't come up by default on the DigiPi. So what you want to do to make that work, let's see if you guys, I'll put this in the notes. You don't have to memorize this. I want you to edit the etc network interfaces file. I want you to put these 4 lines in there. This will make Wi-Fi work, because remember, we're using a Wi-Fi dongle, so it has a weird hardware name. So anyways, put these lines in etc network interfaces. And while you're in there, if you're editing files, go ahead and edit etc wpa-supplicant.conf here, and put your Wi-Fi SSID and password in there. You could use the DigiPi web interface for that if you wanted to. In fact, you can do that right here as well. But, you know, while you're logged in, you might as well do that. And that'll get this thing up on Wi-Fi. That was, you know, another gotcha to make this work. I think change. If you want to see the that green light that pops up here in the upper right corner, that doesn't work by default because the GPIO pins simply don't exist. I mean, there's no GPIO pins here. So to make that work, you need to change it from 16 to 27 in each of the direwolf.conf files that you find in the Raspberry Pi user's home directory. Other than that, you're seeing it, a standard DigiPi software image. And this, again, is just running Raspberry Pi OS with a lot of customizations of my own. All right, back to patrons. Hopefully I didn't lose you too many guys. See, if you stick around during the patron things, you get little gems of information. So check out the patron section of our videos. Fu, Steve, Brian, Jake, Michael, Christopher, Tony, NW2W, that's Mark, Ryan, Bill, I think it's Bill, Ian, Jim, Brad, Douglas, Simon, thank you, Don Rolfe, Buddy Brown, Kevin King, thank you guys. I'm going to scroll through these as fast as I can. I know this is already a long video, but I really don't want to understate how important it is, and it means a lot to me for you guys to be supporting this channel. It really is motivating. You know, honestly, I don't think it would have lasted this long if it wasn't for you guys saying, hey, you know, Craig, do this, or Craig, you know what, I got a question about that. See if you can figure this out. We get a lot of that, so we're doing the best we can here. And this is going all the way down to Louise, Lon, Simon, thank you guys, Kevin, Craig, Duffield, thank you, Craig, and down to Chris, thank you guys. All right, so let me know if you've got an original Raspberry Pi Model B from maybe you got one out of a museum or something, and let me know if you've got it doing amateur radio data modes, whether it's a DigiPi or not. Let us know if that's working. All right, thanks for hanging out with me. My name is Craig, Kilo Mike 6, Lima Yankee Whiskey. I am in sunny California, and I am clear.